Hey, welcome back to another one of my informal, fun little kind of videos about my game pickups. This one is for August of 2023. And there's not a ton, I didn't pick up that much this month. They're mostly Japanese games as usual, as you know the drill at this point. But there are surprisingly a couple of Western games, a couple North American games that I picked up. So without further ado, let's get into it right now. So for the first game, it is from a series very near and dear to my heart, the Ghosts and Goblins series, and it is titled Retto Arima Makaimura Gaiden, or Gargoyle's Quest, as you might know it in the West. And this is Capcom's very first Game Boy game. A lot of people don't realize that. But Gargoyle's Quest was their first foray into the video game handheld space. And this was released in 1990. It was produced by series creator Tokuro Fujiwara, who created Makaimura / Ghosts and Goblins back in 1985. And it stars the Red Armor, or Firebrand as he's known in the West. He's just called Red Armor in the Japanese versions, but they actually gave him a name when they brought it to North America and Europe, which is kind of interesting. But he is originally named and modeled after Capcom programmer Toshio Arima, so Retto Arima, Toshio Arima, who came over from Konami and was working on Capcom's very first video games back in 1984, which is kind of cool. So this is kind of an action-adventure / RPG type of game that plays probably most similarly to Zelda 2, where you have an overhead map where you're kind of walking around, similar to like an RPG kind of, like Final Fantasy. And as you go through, you're getting in random encounters with enemies that you have to defeat, and it switches to a side-scroller type of platforming levels where you have to take Firebrand or the Red Armor and work through the levels. And once you defeat a certain amount of enemies or you make it to the end of the level, you move on and go back to the overhead map and keep progressing. And there's towns and things like that where you can talk to different, townsfolk and, get new abilities, level up your attack. It's a very, very unique game, very, very cool game, and one well worth checking out. And it is on the Nintendo Switch Online. I believe the Game Boy Switch Online, the Virtual Console, whatever the heck they call it now. I believe it is available on there right now, so definitely give it a shot. It's a lot of fun and worth playing, and as are its sequels. So I'm very, very happy to have this one in my collection finally. It is one I've wanted for a while, and happy that I have it now. Alright, so for the second game, we have yet another Capcom game and yet another Game Boy game. So we have another Capcom Game Boy game, and it is Bionic Commando. Specifically, the Japanese version of Bionic Commando. And the box has seen somewhat better days. It's not horrible, but it's definitely not the greatest. But this was released in 1992, and it was developed by Minakuchi Engineering, who is not Capcom themselves. They did a lot of the Mega Man games on the Game Boy, so they are very well versed in platforming. But this was kind of an interesting game because it was the first game in Japan in the series to drop the original title of the franchise, which was Top Secret, and it adopted the Western name, the Western title, which is Bionic Commando. So this was called Bionic Commando in Japan, even though the first two before it were the Top Secret series. They were called Top Secret. Kind of crazy. This also changed up the setting to be a much more futuristic sci-fi setting, which is different from the first two games. And if you haven't played Bionic Commando before, probably the thing it's known best for is that it has no jump button. So you traverse through the game stages by using your bionic arm to kind of sling around and move over different platforms and over pits and whatnot. You also have a gun that you can shoot at enemies, but the way you kind of move through and platform, if you will, is with your bionic arm and swinging with it. And a lot of people think this game is a port of the NES Bionic Commando, and that's half true. It's kind of like a Bionic Commando NES 1.5. So the first half of the game borrows heavily from the NES game, and it is all stages from that. So the first half of this game is pretty much the entirety of it is a reimagining of the first Bionic Commando. But the second half of this game is all completely original stages and some new weapons and new bosses that weren't in the NES game. So it's half a port slash reimagining and half a brand new game completely separate from the NES one. So if you've already played it, it's still worth checking this out because there's a lot of new stuff to experience in this that wasn't in the original NES game. And like I said, the box isn't in perfect shape, but I am very, very happy to have this as a giant Bionic Commando fan in my collection. This third game is yet another series that is incredibly near and dear to my heart, probably my favorite series of all time, and that is Metroid, specifically Metroid 2 Return of Samus on the Japanese Game Boy, which is an amazing, amazing cover. I love this artwork so much. This was released in 1991 in North America first, and then came out in Japan in 1992, a few months after it. And it was developed by Nintendo's R&D1 team, who did the original Metroid on the Famicom Disk System /NES in 1986/1987. And this is a direct sequel to that game. And it takes place on the Metroid's home planet, SR388, and features pretty similar gameplay to the NES game. The same kind of gameplay loop of you're trying to, make your way through the game and you're exploring a bunch of areas and collecting items that kind of helps you progress. But this game has somewhat different gameplay than that. And the fact that you're constantly hunting down Metroids, and you have this number at the start of the game, I think it's 38, I can't remember the exact number. But as you go through the game, you are hunting down and killing Metroids. And as you kill these Metroids, that number drops down a little bit, and the lava in the planet drops, letting you progress even further into the planet and hunt more Metroids. So as you keep doing this, the number keeps dropping, and as you progress, you're constantly going down further and further into the planet, killing more and more Metroids until you have wiped them out completely. So it's kind of cool that you kind of have this almost giant ongoing huge boss life bar, which is the planet, the Metroids themselves. And as you kill more and more Metroids, that bar or that number drops more and more until you get to the final Metroid, the final boss of the game, and defeat that, and move on out of there. But I just thought that was such a cool and very, very different take on the Metroid formula from the first game. And it is a reason why I think this game is so good and one of the best in the series. And one that I am happy to finally own complete in box. Pretty cool. For the fourth game, oh my god, he is pulling out a sports game. What is going on? This is Gekito Stadium, which translates to Fierce Fighting Stadium, roughly in Japanese. But you might know it better as Bad News Baseball, which it released as in the West, which is my favorite sports game of all time, the best baseball game ever made. It is incredible. It is so much fun. If you haven't played it and you like sports games, go play it. It's amazing. Probably the thing most people know it best for is its incredibly ridiculous cutscenes that take place when you're kind of throwing from the outfield and making a play at home plate, or you hit a grand slam home run and the ball goes screaming out into outer space, and there's all these crazy things that happen. It's a very anime, over the top, it kind of, very Japanese type of game, and it's great. I think it's, like I said, the best sports game that's ever been released, and easily my favorite baseball game of all time. So if you haven't played this game, it is very easy to find on the NES, but I really wanted the Japanese version because look at that artwork. That artwork is so awesome, and this game is very, very near and dear to my heart. So definitely one I'm happy to have, and one that if you haven't played, you should check out. For game number 5, oh my gosh, he is pulling out a North American game. That's not a Japanese game. Yeah, from time to time, I do buy non-Japanese games here and there. And this is one of my favorite games on the Nintendo DS. One that more people really, really need to play that just doesn't get the love that it deserves. But this is Might and Magic Clash of Heroes. And it was developed by Cappy Games in, I believe, 2009, I want to say, and published by Ubisoft. And it features very, very unique gameplay. It's a puzzle game, but it's kind of like an RPG as well. So you're leveling up units and kind of getting new abilities and skills and getting equipable relics. Some might want to compare it kind of to Puzzle Quest in a way. I think this is much, much better than Puzzle Quest personally. But you're operating on a field of battle, and rather than selecting your attacks kind of like what you would in like a Final Fantasy game, you're actually combining units of different colors, and that is what activates your attacks. And then you're making combos and calling forth new units and leveling people up. It's an amazing game. It would take me too long to really to explain exactly how it works, but I would wholeheartedly recommend this if you haven't played it. I believe it just came out on PS4 and Switch a month ago. I haven't played that version yet, but I really wanted the DS version. And I also believe it's on PS3 and 360, which is another option. But this game is awesome. If you haven't played it, check it out. It's one of the best ones out there. Highly recommended. And finally, the last game is yet another North American game. I know, scary. And it is Bionic Commando, complete in box on the NES. One that I've wanted for a long time, and one that I am very, very happy to have. This is my favorite NES game of all time, and one that is very, very special to me from my childhood. I remember going to a friend's house, and we just played it all day, and we finally finished it, and you got to the end and Hitler's head explodes, and it's so crazy, and we were both like, oh my gosh, what is this in a Nintendo game? This game's so crazy. And it's just, like I said, it's one of the best games ever made. It is Capcom in its prime. And it is, if you haven't played this, obviously you need to check it out. It released in 1988. And a lot of people don't know this, but this is a sequel. This is not a reimagining or a port of the arcade game. This is a sequel to the arcade game. So this is the second game in the series. And I've already kind of talked about it before with the Game Boy game earlier, but this is a game where you don't have a jump button. You use your bionic arm to swing, you use your bionic arm to kind of like get around and traverse. And it's kind of a little bit open-ended too, where you're kind of like, you can go around to different stages, and you're like, getting items to equip and move on that let you kind of keep going throughout the game. And one other fun little fact about this is this game has only been ported one time. It's only been ported once in the 30-some years it's been out, I think 35 years. And that was on Capcom Mini Mix. I thought I had it here, but I don't. Capcom Mini Mix on the Game Boy Advance. So as popular as this game is, and as beloved as this game is, it's only been ported one time to a console, probably because of the Hitler death scene. Let's be honest here. But it did get one port on the Game Boy Advance, and then nothing after that. Obviously, we got Bionic Commando Rearmed by Grin in, I think, 2009, which is amazing. A very, very awesome remake. But this game itself is pretty much stranded to the NES for the most part. But that shouldn't stop you from checking it out if you haven't. But I'm sure most people at this point have played Bionic Commando, because it is incredibly popular and beloved, and Capcom needs to make a new one. Get on it, Capcom. Alright, so that is about gonna wrap things up. Not a huge month, but there's a bunch of things that I'm very happy to have, and I feel like my collection is much stronger after just this month alone, with a lot of games that I've wanted to add to it. So let me know what you think about my pickups. Let me know what you picked up. Let me know if there's anything, any memories you have of the stuff I've talked about. And I will see you again next month for some more pickups. Thanks. Bye.